Hey everybody, I'm Ashleigh Banfield and this is Drop Dead Serious. Okay, I think we know where we're going. In that case that has been so mystifying as to why 16 kids in one family were all stuck in a 12 by 12 room when police showed up at the door of that house. Apparently not for that reason, for some other reason. First of all, the questions began to topple out of that house like kids being rescued. A, how on earth did a couple have 16 children in such a short period of time? How on earth were there 4 adults in that home with the conditions that the rescuers were reporting? How on earth and why on earth were police there to check on something that wasn't 16 kids and yet found 16 kids? This is the case, if you don't know it already, that came out of Vinton County, Ohio. The Siders family, S-I-D-E-R-S, the Siders family. Mom, dad, grandpa, grandma, all living in the same house with 16 children under the age of 18. When authorities discovered them, they were in such a terrible state, not just visually with filth and dirt, and mentally and medically and physically, all of the above. A couple of them needed to be life flighted. One of them was in such bad shape, that child would have died within days had the child not been rescued at that time. Some of them couldn't speak. The 18-year-old didn't know how to write her own name. We're starting to get some answers, though, because I know you and me and everybody else under the sun was asking, wait, what? How does this happen? This is America. Don't we have to send our kids to school or we get charged with truancy? Like, how did 16 kids just fly under the radar and nobody knew? How is it that this happened with 4 adults under one roof? Where were these kids born? Who gave birth to them? There was all this question, right? And then the biggest question, if the police weren't there at the Siders' house on the day they discovered those 16 kids because they had an inkling there was something wrong with the kids and the way they were being cared for, if they were there for another reason, what the hell was the other reason that brought the police to the Siders' house in the first place and that they accidentally found those 16 kids in a 12 by 12 room? Well, now we're starting to get a little bit more focus on this very blurry picture. And it's still a bit confusing, but I'm going to lay out everything I can for you that's just happened. And it's a doozy. So I always say pour yourself whatever you need to pour, but I would recommend it's not just iced tea. All 4 members of the Siders family have now been formally indicted. Wait for it, because the charges are probably going to surprise you. If you've been following the case, you know a few things, right? You already know that Gary Siders Jr., that's dad, so to speak. I mean, we're guessing mostly that's dad. And his wife, Elizabeth Siders, who now we are being led to believe that is mom of all 16. And then the children's grandparents, Gary Siders Sr. and Christina Siders, all 4 of them are facing dozens of charges connected to the conditions in which those 16 kids were living when the police came in and found them. But it's only a part of the story. There's so much more. At least there's 2 more pieces to the story. 2 additional men are now being dropped into the story. 2 different men have now been charged in a separate investigation. And Gary and Elizabeth Siders, the parents of those 16 kids, are also facing new charges involving a minor who was not one of theirs. Not one of their kids, some other minor. And according to the Ohio Attorney General, the investigation is far from over. So hold it. The investigation that we were so curious about, what brought the police to the Siders' house? Well, maybe this is it. Yeah, mom and dad apparently being accused of doing some things with a minor that isn't one of their own kids, with 2 other guys. It's all very convoluted, but if you remember our original coverage, the authorities descended upon their home on June 30th, 2026. Inside, they found the kids ranging in age from 18 all the way down to just 1 year old. First of all, I can't imagine having kids for that long, but that's what Elizabeth Siders decided to do. She was very, very young. I think she was only like 15, 16 years old when she had her first, and then just kept having them. Some of them died, and she kept having kids. So she got an 18-year-old, she got a 1-year-old. Law enforcement described the conditions that those kids were living in as, quote, horrific. One official said that livestock were being kept in better conditions than those children. It's saying a lot. 7 of the kids had to be taken to the hospital. 2, as I said, were flown to trauma centers in Columbus, Ohio. Authorities alleged that the children had been isolated inside a room 12 by 12, and that many of them could not speak. When this story first broke, one of the most bizarre aspects of the case was that law enforcement went to the home that day to conduct a separate investigation, meaning police weren't there because of a complaint from one of the neighbors or somebody saying, what up with the kids? Somebody needs to go check on those kids. That was not the reason. In fact, law enforcement didn't even know that there were 16 kids inside that house, inside one room in that house. We didn't know what investigation they were conducting, but now I think we might. I think we're getting real clear, and I think there's still a lot more to learn, but police were there investigating allegations of, and it started in December of 2025. The Vinton County Sheriff's Office asked the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigations Special Victims Unit to investigate some allegations involving the of 2 children. The first investigation has now resulted in charges against 2 different men from South Bloomingville, and they are 23-year-old Josh Saunders and 40-year-old Brandon Henderson Sr. I know, I hadn't heard those names either, so I was thinking, what do they have to do with this? Josh Saunders has been indicted on 3 counts of and 1 count of gross imposition. Brandon Henderson Sr. has been indicted on 21 charges, including multiple counts of child endangerment, gross imposition, and battery. Both men were arrested without incident on August 21st. Law enforcement has not publicly explained the full connection between these 2 men and the Siders family, but the media got a few things. NBC4 reports that it confirmed through public records that Brandon Henderson Sr. is the uncle of the 16 Siders children. And I know family trees are tricky, but basically that connection comes through Gary Siders Jr.'s sister. So the dad of the kids has a sister, and that sister has the relationship with Brandon Henderson. And information uncovered during that first investigation apparently led investigators directly to the home where Gary and Elizabeth Siders were living with their parents, the elderly Siders couple, and these 16 unknown kids. So the mom and dad of these 16 kids, Gary Siders Jr. and Elizabeth Siders, they were facing a whole world of hurt after their kids were discovered, in that 12 by 12 room in the condition they were in. A huge world of hurt, including dozens of charges. But they now have even more problems to worry about because they've now been indicted with 2 more counts of battery and 2 more counts of unlawful conduct with a minor. And again, not their minor. This is someone else's minor. So dad of the 16 kids, Gary Siders Jr., he's been indicted on 19 endangerment charges. 2 of them are second-degree felonies. 10 of them are third-degree felonies. And 7 of them are first-degree misdemeanors. I cannot wait to hear the details behind this, like how they got all these levels of endangerment, like what happened to certain kids. How bad did it get? His wife, Elizabeth Siders, the mom of those 16 kids, she faces the same 19 charges. And grandma, that's Gary Siders Jr.'s mom, right? She's the paternal grandma. Christina Siders has been indicted on the same combo of the 19 felony and misdemeanor endangerment charges. Paternal grandpa, that's dad's dad, Gary Siders Sr. So there's Gary Siders Jr. and Gary Siders Sr. So the senior, the grandpa, is facing 16 endangerment charges. 10 are third-degree felonies, 6 are first-degree misdemeanors. I'm curious as to where the other 3 charges went. The others are facing 19, he's facing 16. So what didn't happen, allegedly, with Grandpa? Among the 4 members, adult members of the Siders family alone, there are 73 endangerment counts. Gary and Elizabeth face 8 additional felony charges between them over the alleged conduct with this other minor that we're learning about. And then there are the 25 charges against Josh Saunders and Brandon Henderson Sr., the new names that have entered into the picture. So if you're mathing, it brings the total number across all 3 cases to 106 counts. It's a lot. That's a lot to sort of sort through in a case involving 4 in the same family, 2 other guys. And by the way, I don't know when this is over. I don't know that there may not be more people arrested, charged, implicated in some way. Hey, listen, I know there are about 1 million electrolyte brands out there right now, and I've tried all the fancy ones, but I have a new favorite, and it's Relight. It's made by Redmond, the company behind Redmond Real Salt. They've been mining salt from an ancient seabed in Utah since 1958, and their electrolytes start with unrefined real salt that naturally contains sodium and more than 60 trace minerals. The rest of the formula is just as clean. There's no sugar, no artificial sweeteners, no chemical preservatives, and it tastes delish. Ready to give Relight a try? Go to redmond.life/Banfield and use my code Banfield to get 15% off your first order. That's redmond.life/Banfield with the code Banfield for 15% off your first order. Or you can just click the link in the video description below or scan the QR code on your screen or check the pinned comment. The Ohio Attorney General's office specifically says that the indictments in the child endangerment case contain what are called charges in the alternative. Charges in the alternative. That means prosecutors may charge the same underlying conduct in different ways or under different legal theories. The jury would then have to decide which, if any, of the theories the evidence actually proves. Gives them a lot of choices, gives the jury a lot more choices. And remember, officials have already said that 7 children required hospitalization, including 2 who had to be flown by life flight to a trauma center and 1 who was going to die, according to officials, had that child not been found when that child was found. All 16 of these kids now are in state custody, thank God. Hopefully it's good state custody, because we saw the Turpin case where they rescued those kids and put them in foster care only to see some of the abuse even get worse. Vinton County Prosecutor William Archer has said these kids are safe. I will take him at his word, but I will watch him like a hawk. The adults' ability to understand the case that they're in, participate in their own defense, this is a problem, guys. So I know you've heard this before. A lot of people talk about competency and insanity, 2 very different things. Competency is, can you even get into this courtroom? Do you even belong in a courtroom? Are you able to understand the charges against you and help your lawyer to defend you? That's competency. And all 4 of the Siders family defendants have been granted competency evaluations. They've asked, and they're getting them. Cannot wait to see if they're competent or incompetent to stand trial. But that's the first prong, right? You got to get into the courtroom. You can bring up an insanity defense later if you want to, but you got to get into the courtroom first, and you have to be competent to do so. Will any or each or every of these Siders adults be competent enough to stand trial? And if they're not competent, it doesn't mean they get out. They just get held longer. I've seen a case where somebody was held for 10 years before they established competency. Didn't go well for them once they were competent enough to stand trial. Locked up after that too, so no harm, no foul. Elizabeth Siders' attorney requested an evaluation after raising concerns that she may be suffering from what the attorney described as significant mental health issues. Yeah, I'd say that's got to be part of this. Doesn't mean that you get a pass. Like, if you have 16 kids in a 12 by 12 room and one of them can't even write her name at age 18, and a couple of them are on a life flight and one of them might have died had they not been found by police who were just randomly there on another crime. Yeah, I think it's fair to say you've got some mental health issues. It's just the level of issues that matter here. So the way these 4 adults are being held, their custody status, this is also different. Okay. Dad of the 16 kids, Gary Siders Jr., and his wife, Elizabeth Siders, and then his mom, Christina Siders, grandma, they are all behind bars and they've got a really whopping bail. It's $300,000 and they don't have that kind of money. Apparently they didn't have much food in the house either. A lot of these kids were starving. I don't know if they were. They don't appear to be when they showed up for their hearings via teleconference. But anyway, $300,000 to get out of Dodge, and they can't. The grandpa is a different story. Gary Siders Sr. He's the only one of the 4 who was actually released. They granted him bond. Don't think for a minute he's out gallivanting or going to the casino. That's not it. He was actually hospitalized right after he was arrested. There was some incident that happened as well, and the medical care to deal with him in Vinton County was apparently like super intense. And that county said, we can't afford the medical costs for this inmate. So if we allow him out on his own recognizance, he can go to another county and get his own medical care. So he's out on bond, but in a hospital and presumably getting care. I don't know who's going to pay for it, but I kind of think it's going to be the taxpayer. So if you're wondering how difficult it would be for this county to pay for medical care for an inmate who's awaiting a competency hearing and then awaiting a trial potentially, there are only 700 people who live in their hometown of Hamden, Ohio. 700 people. In Vinton County, in which Hamden is located, and that would be the county that would have to pay for the hospital care and the medicine and the requirements of the inmate known as Gary Siders Sr. As he's being assessed for competency and then maybe ultimately being tried. Well, that county, they'd be the ones paying, and that's a grand total of 12,000 people. So tax base is itty-bitty. So you can understand how maybe that decision would be requested and made based on just the sheer cost of what these trials are going to be for this county, right? This is a lot of evidence. This is a lot of litigation. This is now 6 defendants and at least 16 victims and another one now, maybe 17, maybe another after that, maybe more. I don't know, but this is a hot mess. It's going to be expensive and it's going to be intricate. And this county's probably never seen anything like this. Now, I'm just going to go on record saying they've never seen anything like this. In announcing the indictments, the Ohio Attorney General, Andy Wilson, said, "These indictments are the latest developments in the ongoing investigations, but our work is far from complete." You know what that means? That means additional charges, maybe even additional defendants, definitely a possibility, but authorities have not yet announced any of that. I don't know if we got more people coming. I don't know if we have more charges coming, but my spidey senses say more charges, without question. There are also still some major unanswered questions, like exactly how were Josh Saunders and Brandon Henderson Sr. connected to the first 2 alleged victims? What happened? What's that connection? What happened in all of that? What information surfaced in that investigation that caused the authorities to begin looking at Gary and Elizabeth Siders? What is the web here? And how many people are caught in it? I can tell you this. We're going to watch this like a hawk. There's so much coming out, sort of daily, then weekly, and then bi-weekly. And some of it's just like being slapped across the face with a what the? And so, as promised, I will watch this. I will continue to keep you updated on it. I'll continue to try to keep it sorted because it is very messy. And with that many victims, they're kids, right? So much of it has to stay under wraps. We'll do our best while being respectful to the process and to the victims. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe because these updates are going to be pretty fast and furious on this story. And then, of course, all the other stories as well. Thanks, everybody. And remember, truth isn't just serious. It's drop dead serious.